you don't have to live a traditional life, and you can try new things and just follow your passions. And when it comes down to it, like, just your happiness is what really matters.
I'm absolutely delighted this week to have Julie Ann Gautier as my guest. Julie Ann is a commercial lobster fisherwoman and a commercial tourism operator. Julie Ann, welcome to Great Conversations.
Thank you so much.
Yay, it's so lovely to have you
Awesome.
here. And we're going to start with your question that was left for you by the previous guest. So, Julie Ann, who has made a difference in your life?
Man, the laundry list is long, but I'm going to have to go with my dad for sure. Um, gosh, I don't even know where to start with this man. He is incredible. I have the joy and pleasure of working alongside him on his lobster boat now. And to be alongside him doing the thing that he loves the very most in the world really gave me a lot of insight into who he is. It's really interesting how your relationship with your parents and how you view them changes as you get older as well. Um, but not only do I get to fish alongside him with the lobster fishery, 6 years ago, I took over the family business that he had started back before my brother and I even existed. So taking that over and learning from him and really getting a sense of all the sacrifices in time, energy, all the things that he did for us so that we would have a great life. I live it now and I understand it. And I just admire him so much for all the passion and love that he has. He has made a huge impact in my life. I can't say him and not mention my mom too, even though I'm only supposed to say one person, but the team that they are, and the example that they've set for us all our lives has just been incredible.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I agree with you. It's really interesting, isn't it? The evolution of the relationship that we have with our parents, particularly as we get older. And I think you start to see them more as, not dad or not mom, but as actual individuals that have lives outside of that role. And so I'm just really interested, like, what have you, as your relationship with your dad has evolved, what are some of the big things that you've discovered about him that you didn't know when you were younger?
I mean, he's got a great sense of humor. He loves to joke around and have a good time. He's so caring and genuine when it comes to other people as well. Like, he really is a community guy who just wants the best for everyone and will help anyone out without the need of any like recognition or thanks or anything like that too. He's quite humble in that way.
And what are some of the things that you've adopted from him?
So many things. I like laugh that I'm like, I look like my mom, but I act like my dad. Um, so this is like right up his alley. He loves to like talk and share and do all the things where mom likes to stay in the background. But from dad, I think, yeah, like his entrepreneurial sense and his drive definitely are things that I've taken from him, where it's, there's a challenge. How can we overcome it? Knowing that I can believe in myself and do whatever needs to be done to fulfill the goals that I have. He's really given me the sense of, what would that word be? Just like the confidence, I guess, to know that if I'm going to leap and try something new, that I'm going to land on my feet. It might not look the way that I'm expecting, but I'm going to be okay on the other side. And to see the chances that he's taken over the years, just kind of showed me the way that, you don't have to live a traditional life, and you can try new things and just follow your passions. And when it comes down to it, like, just your happiness is what really matters.
They're such beautiful, really important and empowering lessons, aren't they? To sort of at such a, young age, have that confidence instilled in you and that belief. And so obviously I'm going to ask, like, where did that take you? So take me back to, younger Julie Ann and having that sort of framework, I guess, with which you were brought up. What did that lead to? What did that look like for you?
Growing up, I always thought I wanted to business was my focus, right? Like, I'm going to go into business. I'm going to work a corporate job. I'm going to have a corner office, do all the things. And that's what I defined as success and the goal that I was going to go towards. My older brother, Jamie, always wanted to fish. And so he really, walked side by side with my dad and went into that industry where for me it was you're going to go to university, you're going to get a good job, and you're going to find that stability within a career like that. And I did that, and I did it well. I didn't struggle very much in school. Like I'm smart. I can pick things up quite quickly. And I have the drive and the passion to just, if I like something, I can tunnel vision and just go all in. So I did that for many years. I finished my university degree here in Prince Edward Island and then moved out to Calgary, Alberta, as many of us do. We go out west and find ourselves. Um, and I spent 10 years out there building a career. I really did work my way up in the corporate environment. I was working for a national insurance company. Um, and it was an interesting thing because like I was proud of myself. I was doing well by, society's standards. I was bought a condo, had a good salary, was doing all the things, checking all the boxes. And, when I would come home, I would hear my dad telling people about what I was up to and the pride in his voice and everything. So it was like, okay, like my parents are proud of me, so I'm on the right path. And it felt really good until it didn't. Eventually I got to the point where it was like, okay, I was out there with a very successful career, built up a life, had a lot of great friends, was in a long-term relationship, um, just kind of like living my life and then coming home to Prince Edward Island a couple times a year. So I'd come for like a week in the summer, come at Christmas. But it was just like a little drop in the bucket, right? Of trying to keep those connections with my family back here, and maintain my life out there. And then eventually I ended that long-term relationship that I was in. That kind of was maybe the step one or the first domino that fell to really shift things up for me. I Right after that, basically I had come home for my best friend's wedding, and at that wedding ended up meeting or I guess reconnecting with the man who is now my partner, Dave. And he was living in Prince Edward Island, and I went back to Calgary 2 days after the wedding. So that started kind of a long-term love affair, which, we blame him or thank him for me wanting to come back home. We're not sure. No, we thank him. He was a big part of that, but I think it was probably the destiny of mine anyhow. I just wasn't aware of it because I was the girl who said I was never going to move home.
Oh, do you know what?
Um,
Your story, Julie Ann, is so reflective of mine because I was exactly the same. And I try to look back and sort of think about what was driving me at the time. Because at the time, I was really happy and fulfilled with that. Like, I didn't see it was giving everything to me that I wanted. And so I didn't think that it wasn't right for me. And so I'm just really interested. Like, I think this is, sometimes with change and transformation and when people end up in different places, there can be times when you're doing things where you know that it's not right and that it just doesn't feel right. But then there are equally times when it's working. And so I'm just curious, like, was it similar for you? Like, and if so, like, what do you think your subtle shift was? Because I think my transformation happened so subtly that it sort of took me by surprise. And I'm just wondering if it was the same for you.
Yeah, very similar for me. I still sometimes am like, did that happen? Like, was that really me? Or did someone come take over and just like gently nudge me in that direction? Because um just very unlike me for sure. I I did love the stability. I loved the job that I did. I was really good at it and I was getting different experiences, different types of projects to work on. It was incredible the things that I learned and got to do. I felt like it was just the beginning in some ways, yet something told me that, this isn't the right path for you. It's time to start looking at coming home. I did take a little bit of a roundabout way to get here, I guess. With it being a national company, I was lucky to be able to transfer to the Atlantic region. So I stayed with the company, moved closer to home. We didn't have an office here on the island, but I was in Moncton, New Brunswick, which is about 2 hours away. And I did that for about roughly 8 months. That's all I lasted there. Something in the back of my mind just said, "You know what? Like, you got yourself to here. You can try something new and build back up." Like, this isn't it for you. It doesn't have to be your forever. Um, you've learned a lot, you've gotten a lot out of it, but like your career isn't the main defining thing for you. Like when it comes down to wanting to be near my family, that was what really took the kind of the main seat, I guess, of okay, how do I make that happen and what is that going to look like?
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think as we part of what you're talking to is our values. I mean, I think we all have core values, but we also have values that come into our life and reflect a period of time that we're at. And so it's interesting that when you talked about your career, because I sort of felt the same, when I was younger and starting off, my career and my ambition and what I wanted to achieve with that. And as you said earlier, the definition of success that you had for yourself was very much driven by the accumulation of status, power, money. And then as I got older, similar to you, other values that were a part of me started to sort of come more to the fore. And it sounds like it might be sort of something similar for you, like that value of family like really came to the fore a little bit more. But one of the things that I'm interested in with change as well is like we know that it doesn't just happen overnight. Like it's these tiny, like it's the small, tiny incremental steps that then lead to the big change. And oftentimes, we lose sight of that because we just focus on, oh gosh, now we've made this big change and look how different our life is. But when you look back at that period of time, like what are some of the tiny changes in not necessarily like asking to be transferred with work, although that's big. I'm more interested in like your mindset and your behavior and the decisions that you were making that maybe gave space more for your authentic self, your purpose, your values to sort of come through a little bit more, which then helped you make that big change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I think for me, it was finally really putting my happiness as a priority, not this is what's expected of me. I'm supposed to get a good job and make my parents proud and, come back home with the designer handbag and the things like that to show people like, hey, I am successful and look at me. That was all very internalized too. Like no one actually told me that that's what was expected. I just made that all up for myself. And I think that turning point was okay, like what do I really, really want? And I think what started it was actually well, it was an insurance company that I worked for. And it was right after there was a very devastating fire in Fort McMurray in 2016, where it took out basically that entire town. It was awful. And I was kind of like leading the team from the insurance company that went back to that town to help the residents come back home. And so we're meeting with people, they're crying and telling us their stories of like what it was like to get out of there and, being away from their families too, right? Like I had like a husband and a wife who were in two separate vehicles trying to get out of there, trying to make sure the other one's getting out of there. Like I'm getting chills just like recalling it to you all these years later. And so I spent a week there just kind of getting everything set up so that we could help these folks who were having the most awful time in their lives. And I think that like shifted something in me where I was just like, wow, life is very precious and things like this could happen at any time. And I was so grateful to be able to be part of the team to help those folks start to get their lives back on track. But maybe that was a starting point too for me to take another look and say, like, is my life on track? Is this what I really want? And that was, that kind of started the shifting for me of, okay, yeah, I'm making a good salary and I'm doing the things, but am I truly happy? And like at the end of the day, when I look in the mirror, what have I done for me? am I always, because if you're always giving to somebody else, that starts to take a toll as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like that, that stark reminder, isn't it, of if it all goes away tomorrow, the only thing that you actually have, like you're saying, is you. You're the only thing that you've got. And so, yeah, I can imagine that it must have brought that up. And how did you navigate that? Like, what are some of the things that helped you unpack how you defined happiness and what was important to you?
Mm. A lot of reflection and a lot of conversations with my good friends. um, Definitely worked with a few coaches along the way too, just to help me kind of like pull a few pieces out of it here and there, of what does that look like, because I did feel a little lost in some points too. When I first decided to move home, it almost then felt like I was just like on a conveyor belt that was just going to keep going, and I was just kind of along for the ride and seeing how it was unfolding. At a few points, it was like it was my decision to get on there, but then it was like, okay, how is this going to unfold, and what is that going to look like? And I think there's times in your life where you need to be that in that driver's seat, and then there's sometimes too where you need to let it all soak in and maybe iron itself out a little bit too. So I tried my best to figure out which side I needed to be on at which time, as things unfolded. But I just started to realize too, like, I need to be brave enough to say what I want and what I need out of relationships with others or even with myself. Um, and to recognize like when I'm just not feeling right, like, okay, something is wrong here. And instead of burying myself in work, which I would normally do, and I couldn't even recognize if something was off because I just always had some distractions, trying to find that stillness and that quiet time to really soak in and do that. And definitely the island way of life here allows much more of that solitude, that time in nature, to really just like reflect and discover and connect with myself.
I think it's a story that's familiar to so many of us because, in the chaos that is in the modern day way of living and working, we are so busy, and oftentimes, I hear it really often with a lot of clients is like, how do I make time for myself? How do I put myself on my to-do list? Because I'm just giving to everyone. And so I'm going to ask you, how did you put yourself on your to-do list?
um, yeah, I just got selfish in all the right ways. And I'm continuing to do that. Like even now, still learning how to put up boundaries and when I need to put up boundaries. Um, because we only have so much time and energy. As we're getting older, it feels like we have less. Um, and so making myself a priority, whether it's for, just alone time or spending genuine connection time with specific people as well. Um, I've just learned to schedule it in as well. Like I live off my calendar for most of the year because if I don't, then things just fall to the wayside. So making my health a priority was a big part of it too. Like this summer, the amount of times that I've had to say no to plans with friends or even cancel them last minute because I just was feeling on that edge of burning out. I feel more confident to be able to do that now because I've done the work to build solid relationships where people respect me and want the best for me. I know that if you put up a boundary and if somebody balks at it or tries to push past it, then they're maybe not your people. Or you need to have another conversation with them. But I'm very blessed with such an amazing network here that I can take care of myself and do all the things and have everyone there cheering me on and supporting me through it. So I'm very, very lucky.
And that is so important, isn't it? Because I love that you've brought that up because I think it's often an overlooked part of this putting up boundaries in your life. Because I think it naturally, when you say that, people think that it's personal responsibility on me to set boundaries. And what you're talking to is what's vitally important. It's who you're in relationship with. So you have to be in the relationship with the right type of people that are going to respect and honor your boundaries, particularly if they're mindful of what the driver is behind those boundaries as well. So if it's around assisting you to make yourself a priority and to look after yourself, and it's in service of, your greatness or what's important to you, that's the beauty of really affirming relationships, isn't it? Because it is really difficult, as you say, that reframing of when you've lived your life for so long and you're not your priority, to then go and change that and to start making you more of a priority in your life and leading with that. It's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. And actually, the best thing that you can do is recruit allies on your team to help you with that and to help hold you accountable for doing that. And I often find that, we also have to be okay with the discomfort. I think oftentimes there's this misconception that with any change, that it can just happen. It happens overnight, and it happens and it's not painful, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, but then it's fine. And that's not been my reality at all. Like, there's a lot of discomfort in change, and there's getting you yourself okay with the discomfort, but it's also making sure that the relationships that you build in your life are able to navigate that discomfort and that change as well, that they're malleable enough. And so, talk to me more then about your journey.
Yeah, it was still very, like, when I was living in New Brunswick, I still very much didn't expect to move home. Um, but eventually I did. I did find a job at an accounting firm here on the island. So I was like, okay, this seems kind of similar to what I used to do. I can do it. And like, I have the confidence of, like, I can pretty much do anything. It's more like, am I going to be fulfilled in doing it? Because I love a challenge. I don't want to just come in and put my head down and do the same thing every day. Like, I need variety and excitement. Those are some things that I've definitely learned about myself over the years. So I, you know, did the break from the insurance company, came home to work for that accounting firm, and enjoyed it for the first little bit because it was new, right? It was something exciting and new that I could try out, and I could, put my own spin on things. But I wasn't like super loving it. So I was kind of starting to explore some different things. And one day I was just hanging out with my brother, and I knew that the plan was for him to take over the family business because that was kind of the thing all along. I didn't really know the timing or what the expectations were in that sense, but I was like, what would you think if we did it together? And that wasn't a premeditated conversation. It just like popped out of I was as surprised to say it as he was to hear it, I think. But he was like, oh, like, oh, what? Really? Like, is this something that you would really do? And so we started talking about it. We shared that with dad. And then it happened very quickly. It was like that winter, we were at the lawyer's office signing the paperwork for he and I to take it over. And I'm just like, oh, goodness. Okay. This is happening. But then I got to the point where I'm like, okay, so that was like, I think January or February of 2019. And then as we're getting closer to the summer, because it's a summer operation, I was realizing, okay, well, I have this full-time job, and now I'm going to run a tourism business. Like, how am I going to do the two of them? Like, I can't take the summer off from this job. I also that was when I was just starting to dabble in coaching as well. So I was starting to take some certifications, put myself out there as being a leadership coach. So I'm like juggling these three things and saying, like, I know I can't do all of it. Or if I try, I'm going to I'm going to fail. So I made the crazy decision to quit the one that was paying me. um, yeah, because I was like, I don't know how much money we can take out of the deep sea fishing business. Like, I didn't know what the books or anything looked like. My coaching business was, what it's like to try to build that up. Like, you're not making a salary right off the hop. But something in me said like, no, like this is right. This is what you need to do. So I put in my notice to be done at the end of June so that when July hit, I could be at the tourism business and do my thing. And but it was just like one of the wildest things I've done because I'm not usually that just rash about things. Um but we did it. And like I'm now in my 6th year of running the business. Um, and at the point where like majority of what I do for work, I do in 4 months. And then the rest of the year, I travel and I take care of myself and I kind of like dabble in a few contracts here and there if they feel like the right fit. But I'm no longer hustling to work all winter long as well because I really need that rest to be able to show up and do what I need to do to fish lobster for 2 months and then run my tourism business for 2 months. And like if you had told 10 year ago Julie Ann that this is what her life was going to look like, she would have laughed in your face.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's so funny what you were saying about like when you had that conversation with your brother, because I feel as if even at that point in your life, you were still doing so much in order to keep yourself distracted. This big change that had happened in your life. You were used to operating at a certain level in Calgary of, just long hours. Then you sort of replicate, although the surroundings were different, you replicated the same thing by having 3 jobs in order to keep yourself busy. And it sounds like that decision that you made to quit at the accountancy firm and go all in with the family business, was that shift of you putting yourself priority first and starting to slow down and get present and prioritize your health and yourself. I mean, a commercial lobster fisher, it's just, I mean, I am here every day of the week for the fact that you do that as your job. So tell me about it. Like, how did you even learn how to do that? What's involved? Like, I would love to know more about that industry and that job and that role, and particularly how it pertains to women.
I mean, it is predominantly male for sure. Um, it is really cool. I I love it. My brother and I are the 5th generation of our family to be fishing, which is amazing. So in some ways it's probably in my blood. It was similar to how the whole conversation with my brother went. One day with dad, I said, "What would you think about me fishing lobster with you?" And he like lit right up, of course. He's like, "What? I didn't think you would want to do that."
I've been
And I
waiting
was like,
40 years for this.
honestly, honestly, oh my gosh, it's incredible. So that year, I already had some coaching commitments on my schedule, things like that. So it's not like I was able to just like jump in and do it. But I said, why don't I come once a week for this year and try it out? So that would have been in 2022. So one day a week, I went out fishing just to see what it was like, kind of get a sense of it. So in 2023, I fished full time with my brother. And then this year, 2024, I switched over to my dad's boat and got to work with him instead.
Wow. And in that journey, what skills have you had to develop, and what have you learned about yourself in the past 3 years doing that?
I am very tough. I can handle a lot. It's a grueling job in many ways. Like I had to get up at 3:30 in the morning to be at the wharf by 4:30. We'd get everything ready for the boat to leave the wharf by like 5 a.m. And then we would go out 6 days a week and haul our 300 traps. We're moving traps around. We're doing things like definitely need a good amount of strength to you. So I was doing tons of strength training on my own outside of fishing, lots of mobility and stretching as well, because like you could get really sore. It's a lot of repetitive tasks. So you really have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself in that sense too. And everything's like one-sided. It's not like I could do it with my left hand some and my right hand some. Like everything's just kind of got a natural rhythm to it. Um, but it feels really cool and powerful to be out there doing it. In our harbor, me and dad, like I'm the only like daughter father duo that's out there. There are some other women on the water, but it's mostly wives of the captains that are out there fishing with them, which is cool to see too. But there's maybe like a half a dozen women out of our harbor. Um, so it's nice to be one of those and kind of show that, you know, women can do this too. It's not just a male thing anymore. Across the island, there are other there's some female captains too, some that are even younger than me, which is really great to see. And it's a cool inspiration too. Because I'm trying to decide, is that the direction I want to go in, or what does that look like? But yeah, like being out on the water, the sunrises that we get to see is just like magical. But then there are days where we're being like tossed around by the waves and trying to keep our breakfast in us, where it can get a little wild out there too. So definitely has a lot of danger to it,
And what
but
about
it's
teamwork? Like, I can
yeah.
imagine that, like, what have you learned, and what's been the difference? We talk about teamwork in corporates all the time, but, you're on a boat with people, it's life and death. Like, what's been your understanding or expansion or change around teamwork and what that looks like in when working on a boat versus when you were in a company?
Yeah. I mean, corporate or not, like corporate and a boat, trust is number one, right? Like you have to trust the team that you're with. And when you're in a dangerous role like a lobster fisher, you really have to trust that the people on the boat with you have your back. Because little things can happen very quickly. And, you know, we have a few times where something gets glitched and a trap goes flying or a buoy or whatever. And you got to be quick and you got to know what's going on. You have to not take things to heart on the boat too. Like sometimes the captain is going to be short with you because it's, you know, maybe the catches are low that day and the weather's awful and everyone's just a little bit miserable, and people are going to be a little bit short. But often it's for our own good anyway. So it's like not taking things to heart, trusting one another, and learning to just see what is that next step and be ready for it so that we just like keep it as a well-oiled machine.
I think when people are working in a role and doing something that they love, it just naturally engenders a culture and a team spirit, doesn't it? Because as you say, it engenders trust because you know that everybody wants to be there, everybody's committed. And so it just adds a level of energy and passion to a team, doesn't it? Which is, yeah, so important. And the industry of the fishing industry, again, it's just something I'm really interested in. It's not something that I would ever think of as a career path for myself or anyone in my life, actually. And how do you even begin to explore whether that's something that's a viable option for you?
Yeah. It's a wild industry. What we typically see is it being handed down through the generations as it did in our family. There is a finite number of licenses because sustainability in our fishery is key for sure. So a certain number of licenses, a certain number of traps that we're allowed to have. Like there's a lot of regulations that we follow. If anyone wanted to get into it, you have to apprentice for a while. You have to have a certain number of sea hours, and then go through some testing before you can actually get a license. And then you have to have a pretty good pocketbook too, because they are not cheap. But it is a very amazing industry to be a part of. There's a lot of pride and passion that goes along with it, from the fishing community themselves, but like our outskirts of community too, like the people around us who are thinking about us and wishing us well. We hope to be able to continue fishing lobster forever.
And so, how can we, like, from a consumer point of view, how can we help support the sustainability of industries such as yours? Like, what are some of the things that we can be doing to make sure that this is an industry that does continue for generations? um yeah.
Yeah, definitely like if you're buying seafood, check that you're buying it from like a sustainably sourced method. I'm sure there's probably people out there who are breaking the rules and doing their thing, but following the rules is huge. Making sure you know where your fish is coming from and that it was caught legally and properly, and all of that is huge. I think it's taking care of our environment is a big part of it. Whether it's fishers or farmers or anyone who's reaping the joys of Mother Nature, taking care of our planet is going to be number one for all of us. So these warmer waters and the shifting climates and all that kind of stuff, I know it's already come so far, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep trying.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think of sort of, I mean, obviously you've come so far in your own personal journey to where you are now. From here, if you look forward, like what's the vision for your life and for yourself and for the next, like let's say 5 years, let's not go too far out, but yeah, like where do you see
Yeah.
yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? Like what do you hope to have achieved?
Yeah. I definitely want to keep growing our family business. I am very, very proud of the way that I've been able to elevate it using all of my business knowledge and background. We're definitely have gained a lot of momentum and grown a lot in the last 6 years. So I want to keep doing that. But I want to find ways to use my voice and my passion to help inspire and empower other people to take the path unknown as well. I think I sometimes discredit myself for what a unique journey I have taken and how many changes I've made. And I love sharing, like being here on this podcast right now is just like, I'm lit up. It's my cup of tea for sure. But how can I do more of that? And what does it look like? I'm not sure, but I definitely am starting to kind of put that out there so that I start to attract these types of opportunities where I can share and encourage people.
And what would be that your top three takeaways? So for somebody that, is thinking about making a change in their life or wants to, or is unsettled, doesn't know where to start, like what would be your top three bits of advice of how to get started based on your experience and your story?
I think a big part of it is like, if you're scared, that's a good thing.
Yes.
Um, so like lean into that and don't run away from it. Um, know that you can always change your mind again as
Mm.
well. So like making a big change doesn't mean that's the last one you're ever going to make. Um, and I think just like have fun with it, like if you can trust yourself and not take it so seriously, you don't know what you might uncover. So if there's a little nag in the back of your mind or you're feeling it in your gut, like wherever it's showing up for you, listen. It's telling you that for a reason. And maybe that's just one tiny step in a greater journey for you, even though it feels like such a huge leap right now. In a few years' time, looking back, you might realize, oh my goodness, like that was nothing, but I was so scared. And yeah, like just follow your passion and it'll all work out. We can always go back and find something else if we need to. And I think that's what I always told myself too. Like I'm very employable. I can find a job wherever if I wanted to. However, I'm just really making it a priority to do things that light me up. And somehow that just continues to work out for me. So I'm really happy about that.
Oh, and that's just so important, isn't it? Like, as you say, the doing something that lights you up. There's this, but making sure, like, when people talk about following their passion and following their purpose, what I like about the conversation that you and I have had is you were really grounded in economics as well. Because sometimes I feel like when people hear that, they just think that they can run off and do something, and they don't actually think, well, can I make money from this, or am I skilled at this? It's sort of, oh, well, I'm passionate about wine, so now I'm going to go and open a wine shop. It's like, well, can you make money from that? Are you skilled at doing that? And that's what I really appreciate about the conversation that we've had is like, you've gone through that journey of unpicking that, and you've done it in a way that's slow and considered and been driven by your intuition. Like, you've really gone into I feel like you embraced being a student and being open to learning on the journey, and as a result of that have been able to more and more step into what you're good at and the skills that you have, and also then just expedite your passion in this area for what you do. So, Julie Ann, we have a closing tradition on this podcast. So I ask all of my guests, what is something that other people value that you don't?
Oh, I've pondered this question so much.
It's a
um,
toughie, isn't
it
it?
is, it
Yeah.
is. And I think there's a number of things that I could say, but I think what I'm gonna land on today is just a sense of stability, I guess, in knowing what's next. So some people and like a lot of even like my very beloved friends, things like that, like hold so tightly to their careers and their steady paycheck and their pension and all of that. And I have just found that ever since I let that go, I've had much more joy and passion and freedom in my life. So, I'm not doing it again. That economic is in the back of my head where I'm not doing it recklessly because I was lucky enough to have all that stability in the past, which let me make some investments and set myself up. So now I can let go of that and live my life a little more freely where I'm not like, oh, well, I have to have this specific paycheck and I need to know specifically this is going to happen. Um, that lack of stability has really been my greatest gift to let myself explore and find more happiness.
I love what you're saying. I love this idea of just relinquishing a little bit of control to let more joy into your life. And also, I just want to acknowledge and recognize your bravery and your courage in taking that step and following your intuition and taking the risk. Because I think oftentimes a lot of people can't work through that fear, and that's okay. And the fact that you did, I'm really inspired and in awe. It's and you deserve everything, every bit of joy and success that you've got is well deserved. So yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Yeah,
Thank
it's so
you.
nice.
Honestly,
And now I get
honestly.
to go spend the day at the beach.
Oh,
Like
okay. No.
life is pretty great in PEI. Yeah.
Oh, good for you. Well, you
Mhm.
deserve it. Well, enjoy. Listen, Julie Ann, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. Um, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you
Thank
very
you. I'm so
much.
happy to have had the opportunity. I appreciate you.
Talk about inspiring, talk about what is possible when you design your life in a way that works for you. I found it so liberating that Julie Ann has built her life according to what really matters to her without thinking about anyone else. And if you want to empower yourself in that way, if you want to build a life that works for you, then head over to Integrate, www.integrate.net. We have tons of resources to help you get started. As always, I'd like to thank my editor, Stian Moritz, musician Jamie Jenkin. Sending you all so much love. Bye for now.